Everyone says Italy is cheaper than America. It's not a lie, but it's not the whole truth either. Rent is cheaper, buying a property is cheaper, groceries are cheaper, and almost everyone stops there. Nobody talks about what happens to your US investments the moment you become an Italian tax resident. Nobody talks about the wealth tax on the accounts you still hold back home. Nobody talks about starting over with zero credit history in a country where that actually matters. Italy is cheaper, but only if you know what you're actually signing up for. So in this video, let's look at the real numbers. Then you can decide if it actually fits your life. I'm gonna start with what everyone knows already. The average one-bedroom apartment in the US runs about $1,650 a month. In Italy, the national average is about 850 euros. Americans spend around $370 a month on average per person. In Italy, it's closer to 300 euros. Add it up and yes, Italy's cheaper, meaningfully cheaper. And that's the video everyone else has made already. This is the one they didn't. Let's start with money you already have, not money you'll spend in Italy. The moment you become an Italian tax resident, the Italian government wants to know about everything you own outside of the country too. Not just what it earns, what it's worth. If you still own real estate back home, a rental property, a vacation home, anything you didn't sell before moving, that falls under the IVIE, a foreign property wealth tax. The headline rate is 1.06% of the property value every year. And here's the part almost every version of this comparison gets wrong. Italy lets you credit the property tax you're already paying in the US against your IVIE bill. And because most American property tax rates already run way higher than 1.06%, that US tax often cancels the Italian one out almost entirely. So the real headline isn't you pay 1.06% extra, it's you'll have to report it, and in most cases you already paid enough in the US to cover it. Your investments are a different story. Brokerage accounts, index funds, retirement accounts you didn't convert, that's IVAFE, taxed at 0.2% of the total value every year. Unlike real estate, there's actually no equivalent US tax to credit against it, because the US doesn't tax value on your portfolio, only what it earns. So on a $500,000 portfolio, that's a genuine unoffset $1,000 a year, plus about $34 for each foreign bank account you still hold. Now here's the trap that actually matters more than either of those numbers. Once you're living in Italy, it's common for a local bank or financial advisor to suggest moving your investments into European funds. Feels natural, you're a resident anyways, why not invest locally? Don't. Under US tax law, most non-US domiciled mutual funds and ETFs are classified as PFICs, passive foreign investment companies, and the IRS taxes them brutally. Gains get converted from capital gains into ordinary income. There's an added interest charge, and if a PFIC goes unreported, the penalty is $10,000 per fund per year, with no statutes of limitations protecting you later. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. Keep your money in US registered funds and brokerage accounts, even after you move. Report them to Italy, pay IVAF fee on them, and never let anyone talk you into a European fund. That one decision avoids the single most expensive mistake on this entire list. Let's talk about how filing actually works in Italy, because it's not a one and done thing like April 15th back home. The tax year in Italy runs the calendar year, January to December, but you don't file right away. Filing season opens the following spring, and the deadline for most people lands in the fall, late October or early November, depending on the year. Because you'll have foreign assets to report, you'll use the more detailed form, Modello Redditi PF, not the simplified version most Italians use. And it's not just one payment at the end. Italy splits it into 2 installments, roughly 40% in June and 60% in November, based on what you owe the year before. So you're not just filing once a year, you're dealing with it twice. An advance based on last year, then the real number once your return is actually filed. Here's the honest advice, almost nobody does this alone. Most expats, and most Italians for that matter, use our commercialista, a licensed accountant to handle this. Between the foreign asset reporting and installment schedule and tax code that changes every year, it's usually worth the fee just for the peace of mind. If you want a referral to a great commercialista I work with, send me an email. And if you would like to see a video about the Italian Golden Visa, let me know in the comments as well. I think we're gonna need to talk about income tax as well, because it's kind of a big one. Your social security check and any private pension you have, once you're an Italian resident, Italy taxes those and not the US. The US-Italy Treaty hands Italy the exclusive rights to tax your income. The US steps back completely. So your retirement income gets taxed at Italy's rates, standard IRPEF if you're in the north, and the 7% flat tax regime if you qualify and you live in the south. One exception, government and military pensions, those stay taxed by the US no matter where you live. Back home, the same income hits federal brackets running from 10 to 37%, plus state income tax in most states. So the real question was never, does Italy tax my retirement income? It's which rate applies to me, and that depends entirely on where you live. Now healthcare. First let me tell you this, if you have different numbers than what I'm saying here and you live in the US, let me know in the comments. And second of all, it could be. In the US, a standard individual health insurance plan runs about $625 to $750 a month before you even use it once. And that's the premium. The average deductible on top of that is around $5,500. Money you pay out of pocket before insurance even starts covering anything serious. In Italy, once you're a legal resident, you have access to the National Healthcare System, the SSN. For non-EU retirees, voluntary registrations runs a scaled fee based on income, typically landing somewhere between 2,000 and 2,800 euros a year, paid once annually, and it covers you like any other Italian resident. Most people carry private supplemental insurance on top for shorter wait times, private specialists, that kind of thing. That typically runs about 150 euros a month. Add it up, and even with both the public registration and private coverage, most people land meaningfully below what a single American health insurance premium alone costs. If this healthcare piece alone has you wondering what else you don't know yet, that's exactly what the Italy Retirement Blueprint is for. It's an actual encyclopedia of information about retiring in Italy. It's the actual process laid out in order: visas, real budgeting, healthcare, property, how to choose where to live, and anything else you didn't know you had to think about. 18 chapters, fact checked. Here's the list. So links in the description, or follow the QR code if you want it. And let's get back to the numbers. And this is something almost nobody expects. In the US, if you own a home, you pay property tax every year on the full assessed market value, whether it's your only home or your fifth. The average American homeowner pays roughly $250 a month on property tax alone. Add an HOA if you're building or a neighborhood that has one, and that's another $135 to $300 a month on average. Sometimes far more. In Italy, the main property tax, IMU, works completely different, and the difference isn't just the rate, it's the base. Italian property tax isn't calculated on what your home is actually worth. It's calculated on something called the cadastral value, a government assessed figure that's often a small fraction of the real market price. A house that sells for 450,000 euros might carry a cadastral value of around 70,000. The tax rate applies to that number and not the sale price. And if the property is your primary residence, your actual legal home and not a second property, Italy waives IMU entirely, zero, not a lower rate, you don't pay anything. IMU only applies to second homes, vacation properties, investment properties. Your one primary residence is exempt. What you will pay if you're in an apartment building is condominium fees, and even those tend to run smaller than most Americans expect. Roughly 200 to 1,000 euros a year. So layer this against the US side, property tax and full market value every year, no primary residence exemption, often with an HOA stacked on top, two completely different philosophies about what a home should cost you just for owning it. Last one, and this is the one most people get slightly wrong until you actually dig into it. It's not quite true that your credit doesn't transfer. It's more specific than that. Italy doesn't really use a portable numeric credit score system the way the US does at all. There is no Italian FICO score waiting for your American one to catch up. Instead, banks assess you manually. Income, assets, documentation, every time for everyone, not just foreigners. That actually matters for something concrete. Getting a mortgage. Americans can get an Italian mortgage. There is a reciprocity treaty between the US and Italy that makes it legal. But the terms are noticeably tighter for non-residents. Expect a down payment of 40 to 50%, loan to value around 50 to 60%, and the loan generally has to be paid off before you turn 75. On banking day by day, it has its own friction. Opening an Italian bank account, a conto corrente, as a foreign resident is possible, but it's not instant. Expect paperwork and an in-person appointment. And moving money between US and Italy regularly costs more than people expect if you're not paying attention. A typical bank wire on $1,000 runs $70 to $85 once you count the transfer fee and the exchange rate markup most banks don't show you up front. A service like Wise does the same transfer for around $5 to $15, using the real exchange rate instead of a marked up one. On its own, that's not huge again. Over a year of monthly transfers, it's real money left on the table for no reason at all. So let's put the real numbers side by side. Not just rent and groceries, let's do everything. Rent, $1,650 in the US, $850 in Italy. Groceries, $370 in the US, $300 in Italy. Health insurance, $600 plus in the US before the deductible, roughly $200 a month in Italy, all in, public registration and private coverage combined. Property tax and HOA around $400 to $500 a month in the US if you own. Close to zero in Italy if it's your primary home. Now the number nobody else includes, the wealth tax on whatever you didn't bring with you. If you kept US real estate, the tax you already pay in America usually covers most or all of it. If you kept US investment, expect a modest but real cost, often a few $100s a year on a typical portfolio. Small compared to everything else, and always worth knowing about it before it shows up on a tax return you weren't expecting it on. Add it all up, and Italy still comes out significantly cheaper. If everything in this video, the wealth tax, the foreign asset reporting, the actual math, is the part you want to understand fully, not just hear about it once, that's actually what the complete Italy tax guide walks you through, line by line. Link in the description or follow the QR code. One more thing before you move to the next video. I've been thinking about doing this same kind of breakdown, real numbers, full audit on Italy's golden visa. If that's something you'd actually want to see, tell me in the comments. And now, if you want to learn more about Italy's wealth tax, you will want to watch this video next.